Hey guys, tonight we're going to talk about the starting phase of the Vietnam War and really the background that gets you into why it happened. It's very complex and a lot of politics involved. Hopefully, I'm going to make it simpler. So, what I want us to start with are the essential questions. It says after World War II, the U.S. made a decision that would impact our country forever regarding Vietnam. What was that decision? Who was the person that we put in place in South Vietnam? What were his beliefs? And who inherits the Vietnam problem? Okay, so this is how it all started. It says for years, Vietnam had been controlled by the French. The French colonized Vietnam, which meant they basically exploited the land. Many Vietnamese are going to really push to have their independence. They want the French out of there. So one nationalist leader by the name of Ho Chi Minh pushes the Vietnamese independence from France. He's educated in Europe, which becomes important later, and then is drawn into communism. All right, so he's well educated, knows Western ways, and is drawn into communism. So it says Japan was laying claim to parts of Vietnam too. Then at the end of World War II, they're going to lose their claim, of course. All right. And Min's going to return at the end of World War II, and he's going to organize a group called the Viet Minh. Okay. And the Viet Minh, which takes his name, are going to be groups of communists and non-communists, but their goal is to get the French and the Japanese out of Vietnam, to nationalize their country. And they work to do that. So when Japan surrenders in World War II, they leave Vietnam, and that leaves who behind? The French. Okay? And they're looking to the United States to support them in their colonization efforts. We're in a bad position. What should we do? Should we support the French, who've been our allies? Or, on the other hand, should we support this Viet Minh group, who we see is going more and more communist? What should we do? Okay, so we make a decision in 1954, and it says basically it's the turning point. We decide to support the French. Then the French take the town of Dien Bien Phu to cut the Viet Minh's supply lines, and this is a common theme. The Viet Minh are Vietnamese. They know the lay of the land. The French have become basically, they're just invaders. They don't know it as well. So easily the Viet Minh take the French over, and the French are forced to surrender at Dien Bien Phu. They withdraw from Vietnam. According to the Geneva Convention or Geneva Accords in Switzerland, they are going to divide Vietnam along the 17th parallel. Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh get the north, which becomes more and more communist, and then the pro-Western leaders, which is basically us, get the south. All right, a couple of things I want to show you. Here's a map of Vietnam. This is the 17th parallel you see here. You see this is the sort of the dividing line between north and south. North is going to be Ho Chi Minh and the Viet Minh. And the south is going to be more pro-Western leaders, which is basically the United States. Also notice here's the Gulf of Tonkin. That becomes important later. And the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which runs through Laos and Cambodia and kind of intersects into different parts of Vietnam. All right, here's Ho Chi Minh himself. Remember, communist, but educated in Europe. And I want to show you the Dien Bien Phu cartoon. This is interesting because it is foreshadowing. This is the ghost of the French who were killed there by Ho Chi Minh and his Viet Minh. And you see the French ghost has Dien Bien Phu on his back because that's where most of the French were killed. And you have the USGI here. And he's saying, go away, I don't believe in ghosts. So it's foreshadowing that what happened to the French is going to happen to the American soldier. Okay? All right, so we kind of set up a leader in the South. The United States does. I want to show you this while I have it up. Here is President Truman, and here is the new leader, and his name is Diem. We handpick him, the United States does, because we think he's just much more pro-Western. and we think he's pretty much going to do what we tell him to do. So we'll allow him to be in charge. And that's what's here. We become the main protector of South Vietnam, and we put this pro-Western, anti-communist leader, which is Diem, there's his last name, in to be in charge of South Vietnam. He's also a practicing Catholic, and that's going to become very important later. Diem gets the big head and really, honestly, is not a good leader, and in some ways, not even sane. He's going to refuse to allow elections in Vietnam throughout the country to choose a formal leader and reunite the country. He's going to refuse that. He's afraid Ho Chi Minh is going to win. Ho Chi Minh retaliates by beginning a series of struggles where he's determined he's going to reunite Vietnam. He organizes a new guerrilla army of South Vietnamese communists, so he gets Southerners in on it on his side, and they're known as the Viet Cong. Okay, the Viet Cong become very popular because lots of Vietnamese don't like Diem. They see him as way too pro-Western, a puppet of the United States, to whatever the United States tells him to do. Now remember, he's a practicing Catholic. So he is going to ban the practice of Buddhism, which was a commonplace in Vietnam. And in 1963, he bans any celebration of Buddha's birthday. When the Buddhists demonstrate or protest, Diem has them executed. Okay, many Buddhist monks are going to burn themselves alive in protest of this. And lots of Americans see these pictures and are just completely horrified. So I'm going to show you one example of a monk burning himself alive. The amazing thing is all these people are sitting here just watching this. Okay. All right. So as we're horrified at all that, we decide to take action. And in 1963, U.S. Ambassador Henry Cabot Lodge is going to visit Vietnam. And he's going to find out that several Vietnamese generals want to kill Diem. They're supposed to be on his side. And remember, we handpicked Diem. So he tries to talk them out of this, but they go ahead with their plan. And they seize power on November 1st of 1963 and kill Diem. Everything here looks in an uproar, it looks very unstable. This is not the way America wanted to portray things in keeping democracy alive. Also, Henry Cabot Lodge. I have a picture of him also. I just want to say, if you can find where in the past, in this course, we have talked about Henry Cabot Lodge, and let me know on the quiz tomorrow you can get extra credit. Here he is, Henry Cabot Lodge. Okay, so we have President Kennedy on the scene here. He adopts Eisenhower's domino theory. The domino theory is basically you have these different countries lined up, and communism is the force that will knock over one, which knocks over another, and another, and another, and then all the dominoes fall. We were worried about Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, all these countries in Asia. Kennedy continues his military aid to the South to prevent communism from springing up in South Vietnam. And he sends in what he calls military advisors, not troops, to help the South Vietnamese army. There's more than 16,000 U.S. troops there just to support. 3 weeks after Diem is executed, President Kennedy is assassinated in November of 1963. And now, who inherits this problem but LBJ? All right, so I have a few things more. Here's domino theory, really cool picture of it. And you see the American GI trying to hold everything up, and the Viet Cong here on his hat pushing the dominoes over into communism. All right, and this is probably one of my most favorite pictures that I get to teach about. This is a picture of Johnson later in the Vietnam War, wrestling and wrangling over the number of deaths that are going to come out of this war and what he could have done differently. It's a very powerful picture of how lonely the president's life can be when you have to make those huge decisions and it all rests on you. Okay, one other thing I want to show you, two things actually. I want to show you a quick little video, and I'll show you this. We were soldiers. Really good. movie about the Vietnam War. It's actually the year 1965, and it is a true story about Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore. I highly recommend you see it if you can. Great footage of what the Vietnam War looked like and how it was different from most other wars we fought. Okay, and then finally I want to show you this video. All right, it's just 3 minutes, so it's not very long. And I may fast forward a little bit because you don't really have to see all the 3 minutes. I want you to notice how LBJ is really frustrated with this war, that it's not helping his great society at all.
Joint Chiefs of Command. This is the main Vietnamese language radio station in Saigon.
Every night we'd sit there in front of the TV and we'd watch the Vietnam War right there, brought into our living room.
It was right there for Americans to see every night on television.
I still see them.
Which truly impacts America's opinion of the war as we're daily seeing it in our homes. For the first time.
Having dinner, and there were these guys being chopped up. And that wasn't a good deal. Into your living room. Hey.
Screaming about how evil America was. We wanted to go back to a time when America seemed to be doing the right thing in the world.
I think that Lyndon Johnson was stunned by the reaction on college campuses and city streets.
There's a lot of protests about the war.
A new left, of a youthful, radical protest movement. He had thought that young, reform-oriented people were going to be his greatest allies. So I think that he understood that the war undercut his plans for a war on poverty and the Great Society. He once said near the end.
So it's going to undercut the Great Society. Remember, that's his chief landmark legislation to help the poor. And this war drains money from that and drains attention from that, which irritates him.
Of his life, that bitch of a war, Vietnam, killed the lady I really love, the Great Society.
Okay, so it really killed his love, which was the Great Society. You see him drug into that war and how difficult it is for him to handle that. Okay? All right. We probably should go back to your essential questions. So let's try to do that. Maybe I've lost my document. Let me get out of this. There it is. Okay, so let's go back to that really quickly. Okay, so it says after World War II, the U.S. made a decision that would impact our country forever regarding Vietnam. What was that decision? That decision was to support the French and to not support the nationalists trying to get their country back. Who was the person the U.S. put in place in South Vietnam? That was Diem. And his beliefs, remember, he's very anti-communist, very pro-Western, but most importantly, pro-Catholic, because he's a Catholic and he's going to go after the Buddhists. That inflames the whole society. And who inherits the Vietnam problem? LBJ. And kids are going to be protesting in colleges, as you saw a little bit of that. And they're going to be chanting, hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Referring to the soldiers over there. Not good for LBJ. All right, you guys have a good night, and I will see you tomorrow.